back to the Rapsodo Baseball Podcast. Got a really exciting guest today. We're with Eric Minshall. Eric, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, something I wanted to start with is, we got Seth, the podcast we do together, but we got two Ohio guys. So Seth being from Ohio, so wanted to bring that up. I know you've had some coaching there at Moeller, one of the powerhouses in the state, man.
Yeah, I was. I'm sorry. I had a great experience coaching Archbishop Moeller High School, very famed organization. Just really one of the top 25 programs in the country every year. What a lineage. Obviously, Ken Griffey Jr. is probably the most well-known player, but obviously Barry Larkin and the Larkin family, and current Reds manager David Bell, who I went to school with, is there. So just, amazing names that come out of there.
Very cool. Yeah, I went to Northmont High School. They're over there right outside of Dayton. So more so played in football more than baseball. I'm not sure in my 4 years if we played Moeller during my time from the baseball side, but no, we did on the football side. Usually, we're able to meet up in the playoffs and somewhere along the way. I saw that they switched up what the playoffs look like over there in Ohio this year. So a little bit different. I know that we had a year, I think we went undefeated and still didn't make the playoffs. And it was that type of thing. It was so hard to even get in. Now everybody has an opportunity. So good for the kids, but also they don't understand the struggle of what that felt like back then. But yeah, fantastic school. Obviously a lot of respect over that organization as well.
I appreciate that. It was the values and a lot of the fabric. I talk about this all the time. The fabric that was instilled into me while I was there, and I still carry with me today.
That's awesome, Eric. We're excited to go through some of your background, man. We know you've had some high school coaching, college ball with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then also what you guys do at the Academy in Ohio. Man, excited to dive into it and talk some Rapsodo data. And then also, we have our exciting new program with our certified facilities, which you being a part of and early on that. So, man, excited to dive into it. But first, maybe for our listeners, you want to give, I know you've had a lot of experiences with coaching, maybe just kind of a quick background of how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, I actually started coaching. I got hurt in high school while I was playing at Moeller, and was offered an opportunity to help some of the freshman players while I was a senior. And I took that opportunity and really kind of caught the coaching bug early. After that, I was very fortunate. I went into the United States military, served in the U.S. Navy on the USS George Washington aircraft carrier, which happened to be in Norfolk. And the Norfolk Tides were literally, I could see their stadium from where our ship was docked. And went over a couple times, made some introductions, wanted to see if they needed a bullpen catcher or really well for me. One of my classmates, Mike Bell, who's the bench coach for the Twins, had been there. So after he had left, I went over and just kind of wanted to see if they could help, and ended up, they said yes. So I was like, great, this is awesome. And I got to see pro ball from a AAA experience pretty quickly, and form some relationships that I still have to this day. And I knew once I got out of the military that I really wanted to coach. Went back to my alma mater at Moeller High School, hooked up with Coach Mike Cameron, who's a Hall of Fame coach here in Ohio. And he brought me on board pretty quickly and fell in love with it immediately. And, to start out there was a blessing, just because, starting out a top 25 program where guys are getting drafted all the time or going to major schools and Power 5 schools constantly, in-house recruiting guys, and get a exposure that early on. Some guys, you say, well, enjoy the honeymoon. I was like, well, yeah, to a degree, I understand that, but you can also set your bar for success to be high as well. And what a great opportunity. It really gave me a springboard into coaching.
That's awesome. It makes a lot of sense.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it makes a lot of sense, obviously, with how you're sort of built and raised, if you will, within your coaching framework or where we are now. And I'm curious too, even when BP and I played not that long ago, we didn't have a lot of data and technology, but you go into there and some of the things about just like growing and building men and what that looks like. And you mentioned it, how it's carried with you and move forward. That's really cool that you can sort of, you don't have to look far, I'm guessing, where you can see sort of the imprint of what that does with your days today or what you've been doing in the past. So that's really neat.
The basic style of how I connect with players and how I build relationships with guys was formed right there at Moeller. And Obviously when you've got guys that are in the Hall of Fame and the number of draft picks that they've had is unbelievable. I mean, I worked with a lot of guys, first round draft picks, et cetera, that came out of there, but to see how they worked and how they made themselves into those type of a player and use the same fabric that I learned as a student at Moeller, those things I still use to this day at our facility, working in pro ball with the Pirates and working actually other teams as well. Those fabric pieces I still use to this day. It's very important.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Eric, I know something that you've been well known for is probably being like more of an early adopter. I know you got in early with the drive line, what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're partnered with those guys, very familiar with the whole process. I was playing ball when that got very popular, and my school did that, the overload, underload. But then also with Rapsodo, getting to be one of those early coaches, understanding the data. There was that time period where, coaches were getting familiar. There's new data points that, weren't ready and available to, high schools, colleges, and it really had just got started probably in pro ball. So what was that transition like for you with, maybe bringing some new things to your teachings, being a coach with all that experience, but then having some things like Rapsodo to utilize with your players?
Well, I really had an opportunity when I coached at Miami University Hamilton, which is a smaller school here in Ohio. It's a branch of Miami Oxford. Great school to be at. The staff at Oxford are phenomenal to us, working with those guys. But we had seen Rapsodo and we're very interested in it. And I have a very good relationship with Kyle Bodie and his staff over the years. As they've changed, I really maintained a really good relationship. And we asked a lot of questions. And we decided to dig into Rapsodo and Modus at the same time. Raised money, bought a Rapsodo, and then we had it, and it's like, okay, now what do we do with it? But the beauty of that is having 18 pitchers on staff. We had them all throw. We started looking at data, and the other, I think, fantastic part is how many people we included in that. We have engineering departments. We have a lot of departments at Miami. We released a lot of smart guys and saying, hey, can you help us with this? And they were like, yeah, we can make a project out of this, and that was the jumping off point for us with Rapsodo, because we didn't have a certification class at the time. And there was a glossary and index of how to kind of get through it. But what does this mean? When the release angle changes, what does this do to your pitch? And, how are we working through all these things? So we solved thousands and thousands and thousands of pitches and going through the data and really started making our own spreadsheets. Okay, so when this guy throws it with this spin direction, he's throwing a two-seamer and it gets this much movement. Are we seeing those same things on our slow-mo film, which was really, honestly, our phones at the time? We started making our own way through it and came up with data points that we thought were important for a guy's delivery. And as that developed, as Rapsodo's developed as well, and their apps were continued to improve, and we started talking to other coaches that were using, okay, I'm seeing this. Are you seeing that? And yes, we are. And okay, so this guy's slider, and he's getting 89 degrees on his slider here and with this gyro degree. And yes, that's really close to what we're looking for a true horizontal. And what kind of movement are you getting? We just started collaborating. And that's what this is really about, is being able to connect. Don't hold the information for yourself. That's not important. It's not yours. It's the players. And how do we get these guys better collectively? We want to get everybody better. And we started doing that. And I tell you what, we really jumped off with that. The whole staff bought in. And I got to give a lot of credit to our head coach, Daryl Grissom. Daryl had been there at that point for probably 15, 16 years. And he didn't say no to anything. He's like, absolutely, go get it. We'll raise the money. We'll figure it out. And we used it. And they still do to this day. I still consult with Miami, and their pitching coach is a full-time instructor here at Cincinnati Throwing Club. And we still use that data, and not exactly the same way. We use it better, but we had to start somewhere, and we use the heck out of it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love hearing stories about coaches being resourceful and reaching out to those. There's a lot of opportunities to reach out to people that may know the data or the numbers better, but no one's going to know the baseball better. So when there's that sort of collaborative piece of students coming in that can do that, there's so many colleges and high schools out there that don't utilize some of those resources that are out there and available to them, and they could go. So I'd love, even hearing more about that, about how you guys sort of tapped into that resource and what you sort of like built from that program, because I think it's something a lot of people, especially at ABCA and places this is going to be listened to, that they can sort of get here's a how-to of, you don't have your own data people on staff, no problem. Here's a way to go out and find them.
So if you're going to ABCA and you're not shaking hands, grabbing business cards, making relationships, you're wasting half of the opportunity to be there. I spent years going, and still do. I love going to the ABCA, not only to catch up with people, but to meet new people and go to the presentations and wait around for the presentation to be over. And like meeting you, at ABCA several years ago and getting a personal introduction from Kyle. Here, let's talk, let's share, let's figure out what we're doing. Are we doing this the right way? You should always be questioning what you're doing, not necessarily in a bad way, but are we doing this to get better? And that's what we did. I can tell you how many contacts were in my phone that I hadn't reached out to yet. And I would say, are you using Rapsodo? Yes. Great. Okay, let's talk. And we started getting threads of text together of guys that were SEC schools or little schools like ours in some other state, or it didn't matter what level. It's about using the product. It's about using the technology to get our guys better. We did that daily, weekly. We started texting back and forth or emailing each other screenshots and pulling data together and saying, hey, what are you seeing with your guys? And they would say, hey, I've got a guy that throws just like that. And here's what we're doing. And they would show us video of their pen. And we would share that information because, again, it's just about getting the guys better, but not reaching into your phone, not grabbing business cards and using the resources that are right in front of you. Everybody should be doing that. And it's pitching Twitter right now. There's a lot of complaints about people being nasty, but I don't really see it that way. It's up to us to set the tone for guys to be collectively getting better. And I know it's funny. We're talking about this the other day. I know most everybody out there and vice versa. They know who I am. So, but we've earned that. We've been around a long time and doing good things with players. We've all brought players up in one form or fashion or another, whether they're leveling up from high school to get into college or going to college and get drafted or working with guys that are drafted to level up in pro ball. We all have a immense amount of respect for one another. Yesterday on the phone, talking with Ben Brewster from Tread Athletics, with PRP, which is 2 hours from us, at Greg Vogt and his phenomenal facility. It's not an animosity type thing. We're all doing what we think we should be doing to get guys better. But the undercurrent of that is we talk. We all talk. We all know each other, and we all are seeking an opportunity to do things better for our players. That's why we're really doing this. This isn't about money. This isn't about us. It has nothing to do with that. This coaching really needs to be egoless as much as possible. But for us to collaborate, and I just went to the Texas Baseball Ranch again, and I love going there every year and seeking out Ron's help and working with Randy Sullivan and having these meetings are so important to push the game forward, because I don't know everything. I'm never going to know everything. But if I talk to enough of these guys, I'm going to know a lot, and it all trickles down to the player. And we have to use these resources. And what's funny is some people are afraid to reach out. Don't. We're all adults. We're all guys. We're all in the game. I mean, we're going to find some commonality when we get on the phone with each other, or do a conference like we're doing now over video. Talk. It's okay. Talk and explore. And you'd be surprised how far you can take somebody else's career, but maybe even your own.
Yeah, that's some really great stuff. And I know we've had a tremendous respect for those coaches. You just threw out a lot of names of some guys that we've really enjoyed working with, over, the last 3-4 years with Rapsodo. But we've always had a great respect for what you just mentioned, those coaches that are willing to be the open ones, that are finding new things with different technologies and new philosophies that are new to the game. Because we know all that stuff goes on. We know there's the big group me's. We know that there's the maybe at ABCA, there's times that there's some coaches getting together to, hey, let's discuss maybe Rapsodo, maybe some other technologies, and just what have you learned? I think that's one of the biggest and greatest things is the ability of coaches to be able to share those things to ultimately, what you said, help the player. That's what we're all about at Rapsodo as well. Over the years, we've brought new things to our technology, with it being, like the new high-speed camera for insight. Let's actually see, out of the hand. There's a time pitching didn't have release information. Getting that feedback that, hey, that, tunneling and where the ball's coming out, that's where it starts. And it's so important. But just love that point you just made, that the importance of coaches talking and being able to ultimately help players across the country is awesome.
Couldn't agree more.
Think about now, obviously we mentioned Moeller, and then there's, several layers. There's your time in Miami, and then, moving past that, when did you first start to get into the data, and when that was made available to you? And then what was that process like for you to actually get to learn the data and understand it?
Well, we started collecting data at Miami and really dove into it to the best of our knowledge. Are we getting are we collecting the data? What are we doing with it? And that's when we really started working with you at Rapsodo of understanding what we were looking at. We had theories. We didn't know if they were right. So we started asking. And that's when we really started getting better direction and clarity. And that was really important for us. And we knew that eventually that the Rapsodo certification course was going to come out. And I think that was a game changer for Rapsodo and for coaches like myself. Having seen literally over 2 million pitches before I'd actually got certified, I cannot even begin to tell you the amount of things I learned during my certification course. I was like, wow, I wish I'd known that before. Man, I just learned something new, and actually still go back and refer to those things. Like I said, there's always an advancement. I love how the app has changed so much over the years. There's more data that's really important to be able to use. In the beginning, I didn't really know how important release side was, or the extension, any of those things. I didn't really know how that related. I knew what it meant as far as a pitching coach and being able to teach it with video, but with data, I didn't understand. So I had to ask those questions. And they're like, oh yeah, well, if your release height is, the pitcher's 6 feet tall and coming down the slope, it's 5'6", but on all of his other pitches, it's 5'9", because he has some pretty significant elbow rise. You need to be looking at those things. And then you start seeing that in the video to back up, what you've seen in the data, like, oh, okay, he's changing his delivery completely to throw a changeup or a curveball, getting way out there over the top. And he's having some tissue feedback for it. So yeah, it not only helps us pitch shape, but it also teaches these guys that, hey, you're changing your delivery completely on other types of pitches, and then your tunneling is incorrect, but also you're having an injury risk associated with it because you're getting soft tissue back from changing your mechanics completely to throw a different pitch. So, there's a lot of different areas that the data touches. It's not just about making your two-seamer sharper or your slider more horizontal. There's a lot of things that the data can tell you. You just need to dive in and ask the questions.
Definitely a good example that I like to go back to and talking with one of the MLB pitching coaches is understanding a big thing we try to bring to the table at Rapsodo is the visual feedback. You can get that feedback from the catcher. You can talk with coaches. You can see video after, but we really pride ourselves in being able to show the data right after the pitch is thrown. And the example I wanted to share was talking about release angle and on curveballs. The example that the coach had shared was a certain guy would be, if we're talking about a get me over curveball, maybe it's not that like hard 0-2 swing and miss, but it's spinning a get me over in the zone. And for this example from this player profile, like a +3 out of the hand, he knew if all else, like throwing at the correct velocity and things like that, obviously that +3 to go up out of the hand first and release angle was usually a good get me over for him. And then, more like 1 would be that pitch that could have like the late lower bite that maybe gets a swing and miss below the zone. That's just a small example, but you talked about the importance of release data, and it's always great to hear from coaches, those different things they pick up on, because you have the task of every guy pitching is different. You've got every arm slot, you got lefty, righty, you got different ages even. So there's a lot to, as a coach, to kind of figure out for each different individual athlete.
No, I agree. And in my experience in pro ball, working with guys that have just been drafted, a lot of the guys had access to the data. They either had, Rapsodo either in a summer program or they'd had it at their school. So they knew, at least at a cursory level, the data that they were being fed. It was up to us. Although we, with recently drafted players, we're not there to change very much of what they do. We want them to get comfortable, understand, pro ball and get routines, et cetera. But we also wanted to understand what they were throwing. Our scouts did a really good job of getting these guys in, but now we needed to see who they are. So we would collect a lot of data initially, just collecting. We're not really giving a lot of feedback until they get their feet under them and get familiar with being a pro and taking a breath and realize that they belong there, all those mental hurdles. But we would start collecting, like you said, We had guys that had a get over curveball, they had a strikeout curveball, or they thought they had a curveball, which was really a slider, things like that. So you start working through, okay. And, you know, I had a lot of those guys that, you know, I throw a 12-6. Well, it's not 12-6. It never comes out 12-6. It's at 7:45. It's not anywhere close to 6 o'clock. So, and we started talking to guys that, you know, does what coming out of your hand actually match what you think you're throwing? And Rapsodo does a phenomenal job of actually putting the factual data in front of these guys and saying, here's what you're really throwing. Is this what you thought or it intended? We do that here at our academy, at Ohio Baseball Science Academy, home of the Cincinnati Throwing Club. We have, people are like, well, why do you have the 13-year-olds throwing on it? It's like, well, because there's data to be collected. You know, they don't throw on it all the time. They might throw on it once a week, depending on where they are in their development. But if our player thinks that he's throwing a particular type of changeup or a two-seamer that doesn't move, we have data back up and reinforce what we're telling them. And we did that all the time in Pro Bowl. You think you're throwing, everybody would say, well, I want to throw this pitch like Max Scherzer. Well, you don't. Your arm slot's completely different. You're 6 inches shorter than he is. You know what I mean? There's a lot of factors involved. I understand that your pitch shape, what's your idea of what you're trying to do, I get that, but being able to execute that, here are the variables, here are the things that you're actually doing. And then we would back that up with our slow-mo video and show them, here's actually how the ball is coming out of your hand. Yes, I know this is what you want to do, but here are the things you're doing. Now, do we need to change that? And we would work with the coordinator, an assistant coordinator in the front office saying, here's what we see. Here's the arm slot. Here's the pitches they throw now. These are considered average. How do we improve those things to become above average so that when we work with priority guys, every organization has their priority guys that they have invested a lot of money in or see as being a future major leaguer. Are these things going to play? And Rapsodo's ability to do that with the data that we collect just makes it so much easier because it takes all the guesswork out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think too, just hearing you talk about the assessment that you do, especially with players at that level, I really want to dive in on the specifics with Cincinnati Throwing Club. Great organization. I know, you know, nationally people have a lot of respect for it. So I'm curious, first time an athlete comes in the door and he's going to be a part of the program and you guys are going to kind of do an assessment and understand what this athlete looks like and who he's going to be. What does that look like for you? Can you take us through that process of what you guys do from an assessment standpoint with Rapsodo and the other tools and technologies you may use as well?
So no player that walks through a door is allowed to throw in here without an assessment. We do a functional movement screen with every single one of our guys that comes through the door because we don't want to ask them to do anything physically that they're not capable of. That's something that we really brought here from the program. We did it a little bit in college, but maybe not with the understanding of how important it was. And the FMS screens and some other types of screens are really becoming more mainstream because there's so much more data behind it and how important it is, but better explanation of how to do it. We have several staff members here that are certified in being able to do a screen, which makes a huge difference. But we do a screen with every player here. We want to see how they move, whether they're 13 or 18 or we even do screens on guys that are our minor league guys. We have several guys here that are on 40-mans. We have a couple major league players in here. We retest them constantly because they are at different times of their development still continuing to lift and grow, but are they remaining flexible and mobile? So we want to check all of those things. So we do that, and then we actually do a full throwing assessment. So we work with more than just pitchers here, but I'll speak specifically more about pitching. We do a full workup here. We do markerless biokinetic testing. We do a ton of different slow-mo work. We actually have the insights where we'll do from behind, from the side, from the front. We do all those between 650 and 800 frames per second, just because we want to actually, again, see to how I referenced earlier about, are you throwing what you think you're throwing, or are you throwing the way you think you're throwing? So we are able to literally dissect frame by frame, second by second. Here's how you throw. Here's what we see. And then we have found a lot with the younger guys who have less proprioception. You know, they have a funky delivery, so to speak, but it's really about maybe being mistimed or they don't move well. And they've had some soft tissue feedback. They've had previous injuries. They've had maybe even a surgery. We do a lot of Tommy John rehab. We finished there last month here. We want to see a lot of their previous data so we can compare to what we have now. So we take them through a full assessment again. It may be obviously modified depending on where they're at in their throwing program, but we want to use all of that data to get them to a point where they understand what we're seeing, but we now have a clear line of communication. Do we agree? We may not always agree with what we see, and that's okay. But we at least have it on the table. Okay, I like this. Yeah, I don't like that. And I tell people all the time, assessments are not about negativity. It's not about, oh, you're doing all these things wrong. That's not what this is here for. You're doing a lot of these things well. Invariably, everybody that we see is doing some things right. We need to point that out and reinforce it because we have to work on that too. We have to continue to do those things right. But, using the data that we get from watching these guys throw their bullpens and getting the feedback, we can then accentuate, okay, here's what we saw on video, but the data is now backing this up. When we talked about release angle and things like that, here's what we're talking about. It's making your pitches go, it's making your two-seamer run all the way behind a right-handed batter. You're trying to manipulate the ball instead of let them grip do the work, etc. So we dive deep into that with every one of our players. And that's why we get the results that we get. It's not about us as coaches. It's about our process. And our process is very good. It's easy for our players to understand. And we have the tools here to help them understand. I really don't even know a better way to explain that, to be honest with you, because we are bought into this. But we are always seeking a better way to do things here. And our process has evolved a lot over the last couple of years. But we feel very, very good about it. And honestly, and I hate to say this, knock on wood, but none of our guys are injured. We have no players here that are hurt. We have guys that walk in that are hurt. But once we work with them for a period of time and get them into a better throwing pattern and a better activation series, a better recovery series, they stop hurting, which is great. That's a crowning achievement for us, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's incredible and great to really cool to hear the process behind that. One thing you said, Eric, was, talk about like the first assessments, all the players go through their screening, then they get their data assessment. But a lot of times we call that, like a baseline with Rapsodo. But you mentioned that, are you throwing what you think you're throwing? Time and time again, we see across the data how many slurves are really out there. A guy thinks he throws a 12-6, getting on the side of it, a little too much gyro, slurve type action, or they think they're throwing a slider. It's really not like a gyro or sweeping slider. It's, again, that slurve. So that is, what's so commonly out there. And if high school, college, the different levels, hitters keep seeing that because it's a natural pitch. But then I think you guys set the stage very well for like the pitch design side is, hey, you are kind of in that, let's move what's better for you based off how you throw. Should we go towards 12-6, get you out of the norm? Or can we, go sweeping slider, gyro slider? You guys really set the stage well to help those players in the arsenal. That's really cool to hear.
We have several guys in house right now that are on the new Perfect Game Top 250 list. I think we have 5 of those guys that are in here. 2 of those guys are projected to go top 50. And we work with them significantly in that arena just because, yes, they have a good slider, but they need a pro slider. We call them pro tips. I mean, we've got one of our instructors here, Connor Walsh, just retired from the White Sox, really sharp guy. Myself, obviously, with a pro background, we help them separate because that is what it requires at those levels. If you're going to be a top 50 guy, you've already separated yourself some, but how do you separate yourself further? And it's usually a very small thing. And that's where you have to deep dive into the data. Is it a spin direction thing? Is it a gyro thing? Is it a release angle thing? It could be all of those things. And again, it comes down to, I like to call last touch. When your last touch on the baseball, is it doing exactly what you think it's doing? And going back into the Trevor Bauer, how he was using Rapsodo to perfect his slider and getting those the slow motion video to match up with each pitch. And did it actually did the ball actually move the way he thought it was going to? And no, it wasn't happening. But then he found a way to make it happen. Now, how do you replicate? And that's what we do here is, can you get your body into a throwing pattern where you can replicate that pitch consistently? It's not going to be 10 out of 10 times. There really isn't anybody out there that does that anyway. But can you do it 7 out of 10 times to make yourself consistent? Can you put yourself in a position to put a guy away 0-2, 1-2 without wasting pitches with a very quality pitch? That's my favorite part of the work here. I think that's one of the things I chew off on the most. I love doing that. Just because it's so exciting and fun to watch a guy do that. And then you get surprises. Guy that comes in, is one of those guys. We have a guy here that throws 100, 101 on a regular basis. His slider's 89, 92. It's 4% efficient, 9% efficient. Amazing. A lateral run. These are beautiful. And he comes and he said, "Hey, I've never thrown a cutter before." Well, okay, let's fire it up. Let's see it. We hit cutter and he throws it, and it's probably one of the most amazing first pitches out of a guy's hands I've ever seen. It was like, oh my God, that's a all-star Kenley Jansen type of pitch. How did you do that? I don't know. Let's figure it out. Can you do that again? And then he throws 3 or 4 more, and almost every one of them's the same. It's like, what are you feeling? We record those sessions. What are you feeling? So we can capture it again. Well, I did this. It came out of my hand, and I felt it cutting out of my hand. Beautiful. We want to capture that and put that in your memory and get those myelin strands growing on can you replicate that? And then actually to throw it in front of scouts, and guys are going, "Is that a cutter?" I know he has a slider, but oh my God, that's a 60 grade cutter like today. Like, yeah, absolutely. And he's only thrown 50 ever in his life. So, that's another beauty of having Rapsodo there to capture that data, capture those moments so we can recreate that for them at a later time. And that's why I love having this place. The fun and excitement of what's next is amazing. This isn't a job. I don't come to work every day going, "Oh my God, I got to sit behind a desk," because I don't ever. This is the longest I've sat behind a desk since I've been here, because we don't know what's going to happen next, but we have the tools to capture when it does happen. And that's what's amazing.
And we love it. I'm just appreciative too that we get to talk with guys like you. It goes back to your first reference to it, but IBCA and the ability to network and do that. It's not all just like getting to know people, but like picking up tidbits. I'm writing down and taking notes. I'm like, okay, last touch. Like I love that, the verbiage and the phrasing around that, because that's something we can do with the Insight cameras. We can continue to add that data in. So it's just, we're always learning. This is why we reach out and have conversations, because that goes directly back into the product. So we'll go back in and try to build this up. So that's cool. One other thing too, you guys work with a wide range of athletes that are there. I'm curious, I'm sure that there's actually a lot of different areas you can touch on here, but just at a higher level point, how does it change for you when you're working with, maybe you reference the 13-year-olds versus a guy who's either trying to get drafted or he already has been drafted, he's trying to work up in pro ball? Obviously a lot of different areas, but kind of higher level, what's the biggest change for you guys when you work with those athletes?
Just not overcoach them. Quite simply, that's been the biggest thing for me as a coach. I've learned in the last 5 years is to stop coaching every rep. There's an organic process that happens with guys getting better, and their own internal feedback is better than anything that I can give them. And to stop coaching every rep is extremely important. And to anybody that's listening to this podcast, please take that to heart. You do not need to give these guys feedback on every single pitch and every rep. Let them figure out what's good and bad. It's important to give feedback, but knowing when to do it is important. So with our major league guys that come in, they're already pretty good. They're working on a specific thing and they need specific feedback about that specific thing. They don't need a ton of feedback about their whole delivery or, "Oh, that looked great." They already know that. When you're coming in and you're throwing 100, 101, and you're throwing 93% strikes in your Rapsodo session, that's expected. They don't necessarily need feedback every pitch, but when they're working on, "Hey, my changeup last year got to hit a little bit harder than I wanted to. I don't think there was enough separation in not only velocity, but there wasn't. It was moving 13 inches horizontally. That's not a lot at a big league level. We need to get that up to 18 or more, etc." Those are the things they need feedback on. So be cognizant of your audience and know what they need from you and what kind of verbiage they need from you. Some guys don't need any feedback during the session. It's after, when you sit down. You've got to know whether you've got a guy that's a really internal guy. He's a real internal thinker, and he doesn't really need you to talk a whole lot right now. He needs to wait till it's over with and then go sit down and go over that data. So at a higher level, we're very cautious about what we're telling them, because we don't pitchers are either cerebral or they're logical. And I learned this from Connor Wallace. This is something I just learned from one of our guys. The cerebral guy gets into trouble fast. whether it's on the mound or in his bullpen sessions or sitting at home watching his video, overthinking what's happening means that you're potentially looking at too many things at one time. That's how a guy that goes 2-0 turns into 4-0 will walk, and then turns into 6-0, 8-0, and has 2 walks. A logical pitcher looks at things like, oh, okay, I'm not in trouble. I'm going to execute this pitch, and the guy's out. We train that here as best as we can. Just process what's in front of you, have one pitch at a time, et cetera. And you can train that. And we use that with the data as well when we look at a full bullpen set. But more importantly, going with the upper level college throwers that are here, our guys that have been drafted, our guys that are coming back. We get a lot of feedback from the organizations. Hey, here's what I want to see from this guy when he steps foot into spring training. We want to see him ramped up to this. He needs to be at this mile an hour. He needs to have and these guys know these profiles. I need to see a pitch profile of his two-seamer that looks like this, his slider like this, his changeup like that. No problem. And those are the things that we specifically work on. We don't get too far away from that, because at the end of the day, the organization has an expectation of you to be able to deliver that. And if you're not delivering that, you're probably going to get released. So if you're worried about a whole bunch of other things, you're going to get lost. You're going to get lost out in that wide ocean, and you're not going to be able to swim. So it's up to us to be able to use specific data points and to reinforce. That's what we're really here to do, is reinforce what you're doing well and reinforce what the organization's expectations are, so that we can get you to the point where they continue to find value in you. Because if they don't find value in you, you're not going to have a job. So are there times during the season where we can actually work on something that the pitcher wants to work on? Of course, absolutely. I think there's always some give and take there. And I communicate with a lot of pitching coordinators and assistant GMs of, hey, we're looking at this from this guy. We drafted him thinking he was going to do this particular role. He's a 2-pitch pitcher really for us right now. He needs the 3rd pitch. Can you spend a lot of time before he deloads or takes a break, just getting a feel for a tossing changeup? This profile. Yes. And then when we re-ramp, can we work on that a little bit more? And then sending data. We send, as you guys do, we send a lot of data back to them. Yes, I like how that's developing. Great job. That's what we expect. And when he gets to spring training, we want to see him throw that, X amount of times per inning. We want to see, 3 per inning, for example, whatever the case may be. And then they want to see those in their bullpen sessions more. We want to see if they're going to throw 18 pitches, we want to see 6 of those. So all that's captured, all of it's data driven. We do it all the time because it's important, because it's a measuring stick. Everything data related is a way to measure, and it's a way to measure failure. It's a way to measure success, and it lets you stack up. And one of the best things about Rapscore that we've been using a ton of here lately is showing guys really where they stack up.
Yeah, man, we're really excited about the Rapscore, and we're excited to have you guys, Eric, in Cincinnati with the certified facility. It's something a lot of people are starting to learn about. We're going to be talking a lot at ABCA about it. But what we're really doing is partnering with those facilities like yourself, and what you guys are doing is we understand it. There's a lot of challenges right now when it comes to recruiting, and I'd love to get into that. I know you have a background with the recruiting, to get your point of view on that. But we're really trying to do what we can at Rapsodo. Is we know that players may not be able to travel out of the state to play summer ball. They may be restricted on how many guys can be in the facility. There's all these things, and hopefully we just have a normal baseball season. Those are things we don't really know. So with the Rapscore being new, it's in a way for that player to, one, see where they stack by getting that unique report of, hey, here's where you are, here's where your averages are at your age group, your tier level. And then also, hey, you're in-house, you're where you're comfortable, you're at that facility, you're able to get that assessment 20 to 80 score based off analytics. It's not taking the projection of, hey, this guy's 6'3" versus this guy's, 5'10". It's what can you do with your raw stuff, and how does that stack up against, your age group. So man, we'd love to hear your point of view on that. I know you guys have gotten started with Rapscore. It's brand new, but man, we're excited to have you guys be a certified facility.
Well, we're honored to be a part of that process. I'm glad that we were able to make that partnership work. I mean, obviously, our reputation was good enough to make that happen. So I appreciate that a great deal. I knew that Rapscore was going to take off when I started getting calls from recruiting coordinators at some pretty big schools. They're like, hey, anybody got a Rapscore yet? I was like, no, we're going to make that happen, though. So we did. We started making some Rapscores happen. And it's funny that as soon as we did that, we had some guys pretty young. We've had some 14, 15-year-olds do some rap scores that are all of a sudden started getting calls from Tulane, Vanderbilt, et cetera. Well, they called us. They didn't call the player specifically, but they called us and, hey, I saw this rap score. Can you tell us a little bit more about that guy? Yeah, absolutely. We sure can. But that's how many people pay attention to the rap score. That's the beauty of this. When you're in a national player database and you're actually getting a true rap score, and the cool thing about the rap score, it's verified data. It's not somebody saying, well, he throws 87 to 92. Well, as a recruiting coordinator, what's that mean? You mean he threw 92 once hard in his life somewhere up against the screen and he missed the catcher by 8 feet? Or what does he really throw? And being able to put a bullpen together and get verifiable data that's recorded, that's what I love about that part. I love that it's video recorded as well, so that somebody can actually look into that and see, oh yeah, look at that fastball. I mean, here's the data. He's got, 20 inches of vertical on that. And, this kid's 17 years old. He's throwing 93 miles an hour with 23 inches of vertical. Great. Okay. That's his four seam. What does his slider look like? Oh, wow. That, it's got 20% efficient, and, here's his movement pattern. Excellent. Got a good changeup. It's passable, but here's the thing that we would probably want to work on him with if he came to school here. But, man, I tell you, I mean, just putting that rap score out there, I love it for the players. The feedback that we're getting from them is, we do have some, maybe they're ninth nationally, but we've got other guys that are right in the middle of the pack. They're like 50th in Ohio, and they might be 500th nationally. They know what the guys ahead of them are doing. Here's where I want to go. They all have dreams and aspirations, and it's critically important. You've got to have some type of goal, but you can't walk around throwing 81 thinking that you're going to go to a top SEC school. You're seeing the guys on there some of these guys are throwing 96 miles an hour at 15 years old. Wow. Okay. So I'm not him. Okay. But who's below that? Is the next guy at, 89? Can I get there? Can I be that guy in the next year? You need to have some type of plan. And we do growth and development plans here for our guys all the time, but the rap score really helps us solidify that. It's like, hey, here's where you're at now. Here's your goals and aspirations. Here are those guys. We look them up. Where did they commit to?
Yeah,
and obviously awesome. Recruiting is obviously, this year with COVID, obviously it's very different, and it's going to impact recruiting for the next minimum 2, probably 3 years. But that doesn't mean opportunities are not out there. These programs want all the top players. So if you've got a growth plan to get there and you can actually use rap score as your measuring stick, you're going to have a pretty good chance of executing those skill acquisitions if you actually are bought into this program. And most of these guys are. I mean, these guys get far enough they want to use a rap score. They're bought in.
Yeah, we're really excited about the program and taking it off with partners like yourself. One thing I wanted to touch on with Rap Score, I think you really, hit it on the head there, is getting that evaluation from a player. One way we try to explain the program is, it's like getting an SAT, ACT. It's that type of test that's standard. Players are doing the same thing. Well, if you don't score well, as a high school student on SAT, what are you going to do? You're going to study, and then you're going to improve that SAT. I think it could be looked at very similar, is that, maybe that the rap score comes back and your spin efficiency is way lower. You're cutting the fastball. Maybe it's a spin rate on a curveball. There's something you can do to increase that. You're going to see right on that report, hey, here's what I'm below average on. And then with the procedures you guys have in place and all the great findings you have and great coaches, is you can help that player make those parts of their game better in their arsenal to then go improve and get a higher rap score and be able to see on the national database where, Coach Brown at Vandy is going to see you, like you mentioned. And, it's going to be a chance that, hey, all of this is happening in-house at your academy, and you get that assessment and then improve on it and, prove yourself. Take that time to, really develop pitch design and then, get that higher rap score. And the goal for us at Rapsodo is to help those players get to the highest level as possible. You talked about you're going to have some guys drafted. That's awesome. Maybe that's high D1, high D2, even if it's JUCO D3. Allowing those players to maximize, getting seen and recruited is a huge part of that entire program.
Well, it puts it right in front of you. I mean, like I said, it's verifiable data, but it's also accountability. I mean, are you this guy or not? If you're aspiring to be, and here's where you measure up. I don't think there's anything wrong with dreaming big, but you also have to be a realist. Where do I fit in this world is a really big question. And then if you're looking at where do I fit in the baseball world, now you have the roadmap in front of you of okay, here's exactly where I am. Maybe your coach was telling you you're this guy or you're this guy, but okay, you now have a national player database with thousands upon thousands of players in it. How do you really measure up against your competition? You can't really lie to yourself. It's just like when you go to a showcase event and everybody's lined up at shortstop and you got guys that are just slinging it across 90 miles an hour and they're slick, and you've missed a couple balls and your ball loops. You're not the guy you may have thought you were. This is the same thing. It absolutely tells you who you are in this arena, and this is where you stack up. And I love the retest part of this is you can take it again. Did I get better? I took it as a sophomore, and then I took it maybe again 6 months later, and going into my junior year, here's how much progress I have. And that's another thing that as a recruiting coordinator, I love to see. I loved when guys showed me, here's where I started and here's where I am now. Are you a coachable player? Do you have the ability to have good skill acquisition? Can you get better? And how are you going about that? It was my favorite question. How are you getting better? What are you doing every day? If it's, well, I just hit a couple times a week with my dad or my brother or whatever, or versus going, hey, I go to a facility, I'm there 5 days a week, I lift, wow, okay, this kid's bought in. He really, truly wants that. So all those measurables are important to recruiting coordinator. And I did it for over 5 years. I saw thousands upon thousands upon thousands of players, and you could start to get an idea of how they separate themselves by who's truly putting the work in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Internally, we definitely call it that, kind of the roadmap to player development as these guys go. That's the whole thing. I understand that, a younger kid may not be actively getting scouted or recruited, but him to know where he stands against his peers, where he stands against people in his own facility, how he ranks. And then as he continues to grow and develop, you can sort of see that, that hopefully that positive trend in the right direction of how he's growing and developing as an athlete. Hopefully that's something that a lot of kids are going to be able to take advantage of. And Eric, we just can't thank you enough. This has been tremendous. We look forward to being able to get connected again in person, hopefully sooner rather than later. But we just can't thank you enough for the time you're spending with us, what you're doing for the game of baseball, this year, especially with so many guys not having a season and getting kind of the hopes and dreams of being able to play at the next level kind of in question with what's going on. We appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and thank you for stopping by.
I'm really honored to be on the podcast. I really appreciate everything you guys have done for the game. You're making our job a lot easier with your technology. We use it just about every day, and I can't say enough about that. So I'm looking forward to what's coming next. I know you guys are continuing to advance Rapsodo, and we're looking forward to that because it's only going to help the players. But thanks again for having me on today. I'm truly honored and really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks, Eric.